Welcome to the Resiliently Rising podcast. I am your host, Carrie Holiday, and today I am so excited to have the privilege of sitting down with a special guest that I have been following on social media for a few years now. He is a relationship coach who specializes in healing anxious-avoidant relationship dynamics. His method for creating lasting security for hundreds of couples is by helping the avoidant partner see and understand themselves so that they can bravely choose intimacy with their partners. As a man with a fearful-avoidant attachment style, he spent years of his marriage failing to create emotional safety because of his avoidant traits. As a child divorced himself, he made it his mission to heal his attachment style and give voice to avoidant partners who feel they have zero skills to be successful in relationships. He has owned his coaching practice as a certified life and trauma-informed coach since 2021 and spent 10 years as a professional speaker in the nonprofit space, speaking to over 100,000 live audience members. He currently lives in Metro Detroit with his wife of 9 years, Natalie, and their 2 children. Please join me in welcoming Drew Daniels. Thank you, Drew, for being here. I am so excited to dive in and truly learn from you today.
It is a pleasure to be here. So thanks for having me on.
So if you're open to it, would you mind sharing just a bit of your story and how that transformation, I love using the word transformation on this podcast, but the transformation that you went through in being an avoidant partner, that dominant strategy, to now supporting others in breaking their own avoidant patterns?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. So the story, I would say the one thing about me is that for some reason, because my parents got divorced when I was 10,
Mhm.
that, I actually remember in that moment, they were announcing to me and my brother, we had bunk beds. And I was like staring up at my bunk bed and I was like, I will never do this to my kids.
Mm.
And for me, like, it's interesting being a relationship coach because like I definitely support and encourage and can partner with that choice for people. But in that moment as a child, right, like something in me decided that I wanted to be the best version of myself so that like I wouldn't have to reenact that pain later.
Mm.
And of course, the moment you kind of make a conscious or unconscious vow like that, you're always staring at it, looking at it, thinking about it, preparing to
Yeah.
avoid it, and you miss your own shadows, you miss your own your
Mm.
darkness. And for me, I met my wife. We met young, so we got married when I was 24 and she was 21, but we had dated for 3 years, so 21 and 18, and it was right when we were starting to date at 21 and 18, which is like essentially young adults and teenagers.
Yeah.
It's like I got really hurt. I didn't date in high school and on purpose because I truly believe that for a lot of different reasons that would somehow result in having the best marriage. And so when I met my wife, I'd only really dated one other person and really felt hurt and rejected right off the bat. And that's almost out of spite, right? I decided to be really avoidant. And from there, I just like fell into that mold of like being extremely avoidant, very overwhelmed, shutting things down. My body would just like possess me, so to speak. And
Mm.
like, you don't want to think, you don't want to introspect, you don't want to analyze. Your body's saying you're exhausted, you have contempt, you have disdain, you're frustrated, you feel unseen, you're, wrapped up in your hurt. And the last thing you want to do is try to explain that to somebody because, you're wrong. Your feelings are wrong and they're primitive or they're underdeveloped. And so I didn't have that language then, right? All I knew was this is really uncomfortable and
Yeah.
being with you makes me feel like I want to shut down and not address this.
Mm.
And so I lived in that for 3, 4, 5 years. And inside of that, there was just a bunch of different other traumas that, were just there from attachment issues, if we're talking attachment theory.
Yeah.
And what that kind of did was it just eroded this trust over time where, I probably lived primarily in a very justified avoidance, a very justified sense of anger. And I think it's really worth noting that, and just to audiences who are your audience who's getting into this, maybe that like, yeah, I would classify myself as like this fearful avoidant. So the disorganized attachment style. which means you essentially have all the avoidant traits and all the anxious traits.
Yeah,
You didn't know
it's
it.
fun.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's great. You got a double portion of healing, right? Like,
Yeah.
uh, so all of it to say though, it's like what did, and what's kind of maybe known or popularized is that you end up choosing the strategy that your partner's not, or the one that works in that particular relationship. So yeah, for me, I just like dominated that avoidance strategy for years. And, I would even say like, you know, that stuff, it's on you. Like those traits are on you, and you've
Yeah.
rehearsed them and you know, baked in
You've
them for
mastered
so
them.
you've mastered being really good at them. So even in the last few years, I've had to like really kind of, still work on a lot of those traits, but the last few years has actually been really working on a bunch of anxious traits I didn't know I had too. So I
Right?
feel really well versed in both.
I feel like for me, because I'm kind of the opposite. My dominant trait for so long was anxious, and now I'm like, oh my gosh, I have so much avoidance in me that I didn't even realize I'm having to work on. And it's like, wow, yeah,
Yeah, it's like I'm
because
so yeah.
yeah, we're just I think human beings. We're just great balls of fun all around.
Yeah, yeah, it's like that's just so there's a relief because on some level I do think we all have the
Yeah.
same experiences, and like when you're
Mm-hmm.
really anxious, you're very avoidant. Let's say stepping into your full power of your full
Yeah.
truth, and so you're actually very avoidant of like like taking up space and having impact. Some not universally, but generally this can be true. And for that avoidant, you can be very anxious around intimacy, very anxious around your guilt and your shame, and so that's your anxious,
Mm-hmm.
showing up. So totally, totally resonate with that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I love attachment theory, and just I think too often maybe we over identify with the one,
Yeah,
where it's like, I am this. It's like, well, if we hold up, first off, we are all of them, like they're pulled out in different relationships or in different situations, even that our body is amazing at adapting and pulling on the resources that it knows that it has in those situations, that it's like, yeah, anxious here, avoidant there, depending on what your body deems in that moment is the best method. But what's the overarching? And that's where we see like the disorganized of, like, I call it throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. That's how I identify that disorganized is like,
yeah,
it's just a shit show.
it really is. Like you're just like, does this work? Yes or no? No. Okay, let's try a different, maybe maladaptive way to get
Yeah,
my needs
exactly.
met. Yeah.
Right. Because our body's so brilliant, just as you just said, like, to get the needs met. Like, there's so much compassion for whichever strategy is adapted, that your body adapted it because it knew it would work. It would get you
Yeah.
through it. That there's like no shame in that. And that's something I hope that people listening today really walk away with, recognizing there's no shame in the avoidance at
Yeah.
all. Like that overwhelm that you named for you. Like, I don't want to feel this way. Well, of course we don't want to feel that way. Who would want to feel that way?
Yeah.
That's like, I'm going to avoid this because it doesn't feel good. And I think we would
Yeah.
all really, when we look deeper of what's beneath the surface, we would all agree that avoidance, I get it. Do it. Lean in when we
Yeah.
understand what's brewing under it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that you mentioned like the body piece because I think that was really missing for me and has really
Yeah.
only come in line, I would say, in the last maybe year or two. Like, because, it's like your body's in the freezer as an avoidant. Like you're not in touch with what's
Yeah.
going on south of your south of your mouth. And and so like when you're finally in your heart, in your body, like yeah, you're unlocking a bunch of like really painful realizations and insights. And yeah, it makes sense why your body is like, yeah, I want to protect you because, this could traumatize you if you like don't know how to assign the meaning in the right way or, whatever. So that's not necessarily my like my mastery, but it's something that I'm coming online to. And I love that I know that you have maybe more of a specialization in understanding kind like really listening into the wisdom of the
The
body.
body.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's my jam.
That's your jam.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's my jam. Sometimes my kids are like, Mom, really? I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Um, so kind of along those lines, digging deeper
Mhm.
into what's below the mouth,
Yeah.
what are some of those fears and beliefs that most people do not see when they are in relationship with an avoidant partner. They just kind of, they see the top, the presentation, but what are you seeing as what's beneath that?
Yeah, it's tragic, and I'll press into this because I think, the number one thing I'll hear from, people who are with avoidant partners is the confusion. It's like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't understand how to decode. I don't understand how someone arrives at this decision making. I don't understand why someone would treat someone in this way when they know it's hurtful. They know, and they just cannot admit their shame. They have to be defensive. It's like this addiction that they must be defensive. They must not, be vulnerable and open up. And it's like, what is the feelings? Like, how do we explain that, phenomenon? Is like what so many anxious partners like will literally just work with me because they're like, just decode it, interpret it. I don't understand. I want to understand it. And here's like a few ways that I do understand it. And like, is that it is what you think it is. And that makes it worse. And here's what I mean when I say that. Every time an avoidant partner is like being defensive over something, they're confessing to you what their insecurity is. Their defensiveness
Oh.
is that confession of their insecurity. And they are narrating you like that. They're narrating a version, a caricature of you that represents all of their insecurity and shame. And they're absolutely convinced that that is who you are and that it's your life mission to expose you to get you to admit to yourself how horrible, shitty, awful you really are. And so in your, mind and in your heart, you're like, I can't be that. That I can't afford to actually be that person, that man. And so I must convince them through my logic, through my defenses, through my protections, through the stories that I've clung on to about myself my whole life that tell me otherwise. And I call it my successes, my skills, my mastery. And this is usually men, right? Usually men have avoidance where it's like, I must cling to my successes. That is what tells me I'm worthy of collecting love in this life.
Mm.
And, think about being around other guys as a little boy, right? You're constantly being corrected. Like, you're not doing the golf swing form enough. You're not running your drills good enough. You're not sitting still enough in class. Like,
You're not man
I have a thought.
enough.
You're
Sometimes we get
not
that
man
one.
enough. Yeah, you
Yeah.
haven't mastered your body. You haven't mastered your mind. And I do believe that healthy masculinity looks like mastering your relationship to your impulses, but it gets distorted into the dark masculine or to like the more controlling, unhealthy, where it's just like, don't feel anything, just do it. And you just must use power and control at all costs. And so that's like the overt, right, side of the
Pendulum
spectrum.
swing.
The
Mhm.
pendulum, yeah, like you must be in control at all times and you must not have weakness. And so it truly does feel like if I'm vulnerable, I'm confirming that your story of me is correct. And what does that mean about me? Has everyone been seeing this the entire time? And what would that mean about my public life is that it's all a lie. I'm a lie. I've been lying to myself this whole time. And can I face that? That's what it feels like. And so it's
Yeah.
like, just be honest and be vulnerable, acknowledge your wrongs. And it's like, to me, I just want to get on and post about this, but I know I just get lit up and I just can't. But the thing that feels so unshakable to me is like making equivalents to like what an equal and opposite, feeling might be for the anxious attachment partner. And for the anxious attachment partner, it literally is the same work. It's like, it's being really firm and standing in your full power and allowing your truth to potentially result in an outcome of what might be abandonment.
Yeah.
Like, if you were to be like, hey, I want you to do something that's going to basically volunteer yourself to get full shutdowns, no communications for 3 days, and your whole future's in jeopardy. Go ahead and do it. And then if you don't do it, I'm going to call you evil and shame you for it. Like, that is what the avoidant experience is like. And they're less developed. They don't have the skills to even go there because that's where their wounding is. It's in the emotional space. So like, we re-wound the avoidant all over again by shaming them for like being really poor at this. And the feeling is absolutely fair, right? Like, the lack of accountability, the lack of responsibility is extraordinarily impactful. And, I could be done advocating for the avoidant partner right now and spend the rest of this episode only advocating for the anxious position and just saying like, yeah, how horrible and unfair it really is. And I can spend and feel good about it because it's that bad. So anyways, I monologue because I think about this stuff very carefully and lived it. So
Yeah.
that's my feelings of what it's probably like, if you don't understand, that's what it's like.
Yeah, I think of a lot of I mean, I love the idea of how do you connect it? How do you help the other one see to under like that empathy, this is where they're coming
Yeah.
from. And I think at the core, we forget that anxious and avoidant at the root are the same. Like, what
Yeah.
is it? They're both driven by an insecurity. And the the strategy, I like to say strategy instead of style, but the strategy
Okay.
that we use outwardly is a strategy that we use internally.
Mm.
And the we do villainize and we other and shame whichever, it's like avoidance, like, oh, you're too needy, you're too clingy to the anxious, or the anxious, oh, you're shut down and you don't care about anything and you're, you know, emotionally immature, and all we just spew out all of these narratives when at the root of it all, we are wounded beings running around
Yeah.
trying to find some type of connection and stability without knowing how to get it, and terrified how to get it. Like, fear is at the root of it all. That I think if we just see both both strategies, both partners are struggling in their own ways with the same issue,
Yeah.
so much compassion can come. And to your point, like, intention doesn't negate impact.
Hmm.
That you can be curious and compassionate with somebody and still have boundaries. You can say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that you went through that," and also it's not okay that you're repeating the cycle, and then you're doing that
Mm.
to me. Like,
Hmm.
a good thing does not have to negate the other.
Mm.
Like, we can show kindness and still be boundaried at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah. I admire that you are able to really own that position of just being like, hey, like, yeah, there is insecurity like driving both. I think if I'm honest, I feel shy about that. And
Mm,
I'll notice it even with clients, like I'll get shy on like confronting a certain partner if I fear that they have a belief set that it's the other partners is the problem. I get really shy on confronting like I think that, and especially from doing the work, like I noticed that it's the anxious partners when they gain some perspective and like they adjust a few things and just they show up really securely, like they tend to get some pretty good results too. And so,
mhm.
and I'm not saying that's their job, because I know for a fact, like, how I again, as someone who's a fearful avoidant, I've had my own sets of challenges here where you're doing everything under the sun to find
Yeah,
connection. So it's not
yeah.
like you're not trying. However, I get shy on it because I'm sensitive to it, because I've struggled on both sides, so I get really scared. So I love that you can kind of own that a little bit here.
Well, I've been on the journey a while, Drew. I've had to own a lot of stuff.
Yes, it sounds like it. It's like a native language at this point. It's just
Uh,
easy.
well, not easy. Hold on, hold
Not
on. I need
easy.
to correct that right there.
Okay, yes, it's not easy, but I do it anyways.
Exactly. And, my husband and I, we continually navigate the new information. I think that's something
Mm,
that often people don't understand when you're going through healing, that you think, oh, I know it all and that's it. But there's continually, it's like the onion. You're continually
mm,
discovering things about yourself and your partner. And as new situations arise, like, um, our kids, my oldest is 15, and so my second is 13, so we have two teenagers and then two preteens, and the season of life they're in triggers a lot of wounds that
mm.
now I'm like, "Ooh, okay. I gotta shed some light on this part that is bringing up a lot of that insecurity." So, I've had a lot of practice at
Oh, yeah, especially as a mom. I mean, I have two little ones, 5 and 2, and I'm already seeing just like how much gets brought out of you. So
Mhm.
just think about me in the future. So,
That's where I often say that, one of the best things you can do as a parent is to work on your own nervous system and your own relationship with your own
mm,
parts, and
yeah,
also being a parent is going to make that exponentially harder. Like,
yeah.
it's the best thing you could ever do as a parent, bar
I
none.
totally agree.
Yeah. So
From
in
afar.
that anxious and avoidant dynamic,
Mhm,
that so many are in, Um, what are some common blind spots that you see?
Ooh, in the dynamic itself?
Yes. Yeah.
Ooh, great question, some blind spots. Yeah. I mean, certainly I kinda tip my cards to it a little bit, but I think, the blind spots of the avoidant, which are a little more obvious, and I'll start there just to, like, kinda disarm us all here. I think for the avoidant, they are so certainly, not as aware of, like, it doesn't matter what they think, it matters how they feel. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? Like, how do I mean that? I mean that for their partner, they're so interested in trying to change the mind of their anxious partner. They're trying to convince them that um, the avoidant partner is saying, "My impact isn't that bad." They're trying to, like, convince them, and
Yeah.
what they're failing to realize is, like, it's not about how it's being thought about or whether or not the information is correct or, if you're not as at fault as you think you are. It's more about the emotional impact and the size of that impact in your partner. And so, of course, that avoidant person who's just not as, and I like to use the word developed, they're not as developed in their emotional awareness and curiosity and expression and clarity, like all of the
Mhm.
above. And so for them, they're just seeing it through this lens of winning, losing, of coexisting in peace. And for them, they really operate in a world where if we get into conflict, like we should just be okay. We should just be able to move past it. Like it happened. It doesn't affect my
Yeah.
bigger view of you. And like, why can't you do that for me? The fact that you can't forgive me makes me feel like you're the problem. And so they can't understand, for them, you know, depending on their childhood experience, a really common one is that like, yeah, they had to bottle a lot of things up, or they had parents that just kind of they moved on from things because parents were able to, just meet needs and brush it under the rug or whatever it might be. And so I think that's a very obvious blind spot. I think in the dynamic of that anxious partner, I do think the blind spot, and this is where it gets so fragile, and I'm just so unbelievably sensitive to even saying this on a podcast with people who are in this position. Like that's my heart truly, is just like the ultimate expression of vulnerability for that anxious partner is that I'm still here in this relationship and I feel like I shouldn't be anymore.
Mm.
Like my shame is that I'm here. And
Oh my gosh. That, like, I got goosebumps with that because
yeah,
how many people that have been betrayed that feel that very thing you just said? Shame for putting up with it, shame for not leaving, shame for loving them still. Holy cow.
what does
Yeah.
it say about me that
Mhm.
I don't get to be the girl in the pop song sticking it to that other
Yes.
partner, or whatever it like yeah, there's a real shame in that it's like, how come I can't respect myself enough?
Yes.
And care, what really, someone who's been in that anxious position, like the phrase that somehow just landed with me is, I don't respect my experience of life. Like I don't respect my own consciousness.
Oh my gosh, I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I was like, I think somehow it's virtuous to suffer. And I think it says something about me that I can tolerate suffering and hold space for suffering. And that somehow that gives me the gold star, because that's
Mhm.
the anxious mindset, is that I must perform. I must keep love in front of me. So if I just become a perfect performing partner, love will stay here and they will see my act of my grandiose act of performance. One day they will turn around and they will fall in love with me. They'll never leave me again once they truly know. And if I can get them into their emotional space, then they'll see. Now, honestly, because I know that, my life, like I love my wife, and that's the life I owe to her. I want to give my wife that life. I want to pay her back. Truly, I mean that. And I want other men to do that. I think that'd be very healing. I think we need that. And in all of this, the blind spot is not that like, hey, here's another thing for you to perform, anxious partner. Like that's not, I hope they don't hear that, because
Mhm.
that would send you into more hypervigilance towards self-improvement. You
Yes.
don't need more of that. You don't need more like hating yourself or shaming yourself for what
Yeah.
you're not self-improving on. I was in there too. But it's actually just the actual uncomfort there is that, oh my gosh, like I don't want to cause rupture. And because I don't want to step into my full power and hold a firm, consistent boundary with my truth and let it ring out and have impact on my avoidant partner, like that would be the thing that I like encourage. It's like, no, he's going to be or I say they, avoidant partner, are going to be defensive. They've created a character of you that is not necessarily based in reality, but it's real for them. And that's really tragic.
Yeah.
And so the blind spot of that avoidant partner for them is they don't even know that they're doing that. And I'm going to come back to the blind spot over here because I think it's so worth mentioning. The avoidant partner, the biggest, like when the veil was lifted from my eyes and the scales fell out of my eyes, and I did have the moment that every listener would hope for of their husband or avoidant partner. Like I had it, and it traumatized me to see myself through the eyes of a woman, to see myself 100% for how I impacted someone's consciousness, their brain, their rumination, to feel it, to feel it about myself, but also to feel it for them too.
Mm.
And I saw it as my job, my responsibility to do that. So I think for avoidant partners, they severely underestimate the torture of the anxious partner's brain, of what it's like. It is a very painful, conscious torture to be in the anxious partner's brain. And they don't understand that. They don't get it. And they don't want to, because if they did, they might be traumatized too.
Yeah. Let's have a moment of silence for that to really sink in. Because I say it often in regards to like transparency after betrayal. Is like by the time a partner has been betrayed, which is generally, we're doing generalizations here, more anxious. Mm-hmm. By the time they ask a question, that question has been torturing them forever.
Oh yeah.
And so by the time they get to the point of asking it, for the one that is avoidant, that betrayed, it's like, oh, really got to answer this question. But it's like, I have been dying, and there's so much anxiety about asking this question and what the answer could be. And so the torture, I think yes, it's like you want to claw your skin out at times as the one that's anxious.
And you have no good evidence either, right? Like you have no evidence that like this will go well.
Exactly. And that comes into, that insecurity where conflict, it's like the one anxious is doing everything to avoid conflict because of disconnection, and the one avoidant can't handle the overwhelm of conflict. So a lot of conflict is being avoided, but guess what that also means? A lot of connection is being avoided, because the only way to deepen connection is to go through struggle. Like you get to know each other more and understand each other more, that we try to tiptoe around the issue, but the issue allows us to get to know each other and support each other and create more and more safety for one another, which opens the door for more fun and play and intimacy. That conflict is a good thing. Even the Gottmans talk about all the time, right? It's the Fight Right book. I don't know if you read that yet. It's a phenomenal book.
I want to.
So good. But it's not about the ruptures. It's about how well you repair. You can have that secure relationship even after betrayal. You can have that because it's not about the ruptures. How well do you come out of this? And that does involve the ability to look inward of what are your own insecurities. What strategy are you using that needs to be tended to? I don't like to say changed or fixed, tended to.
Ooh,
because those parts of you served a damn good purpose for a hell of a long time, and they do not need to be shamed for that. But how can we tend to them and nurture them to break that dynamic that's keeping you stuck in this perpetual toxic dynamic? Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I resonate with like this feeling in the discussion because we're competing, and I love in the Fight Right. Like I chat GPT'd some Fight Right summaries because I was like, I want to know the bullet points before I read this because I think Gottmans are great. And I one thing they talk so much about is really uncovering that dream or what
Mhm.
was lost, right? And yeah, in this dynamic of the anxious avoidant trap, I think what I just keep encouraging couples to focus on is like, you're right. It's not about just like the rupture that will happen. That's going to keep happening because that's
Mhm.
our own data and information of what's coming up in me, of what's unhealed, what needs to be tended to your point. And instead, it's like the goal is like, how can I have extreme consideration for my partner's version of this?
Yeah.
It's different. Mine's different than theirs, and it's like what they're asking me. And so even for avoidant partners, it's like they're so sensitive to rejection, right? That's the main wound driving everything
Right.
is rejection, shame. And for them, they're hearing correction everywhere because they're so sensitive that you're not going to love me unless I change. And they're right. Like they do need to adjust, their approach of how they create connection, and connection requires conflict, sharing truth, because then we're getting the full spectrum of who we are.
Yeah.
If you're only revealing 10% of your truth, then you only have 10% connection. And so for that avoidant partner, that's sufficient for them because they find their peace alone. And but it's not, because what they notice is it doesn't matter if I run from this marriage or that one. I'm still left with feeling like I have really ugly ways of thinking about myself that I don't like. And what they really want and don't know how to ask for is, can a partner see that about me, have extreme consideration for me, and grieve with me the loss of me needing to change this about myself, and to understand how truly challenging that is, and that feels like dying to me. And that's kind of like what I try to help people see about that avoidant is like, yeah, they're terrified that love is conditional for them, because they're kind of right. Now, I say love, and someone in my comments is like, love is unconditional. It's behavior that's conditional or whatever. And I'm like,
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
what you mean, but I think
Right,
what I'm saying is,
semantics. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
semantics, the contract of love, right? The contract of like feeling safe in this place together. It does require us to change how we approach things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And
So
change by nature creates conflict.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
just there's resistance in change
Hmm.
that happens, um and a lot of it is that looking inward. That's why I say the strategy that we use outwardly mirrors the strategy that we use internally. Our relationship, the internal working model. It's the way that we then
Hmm.
view ourselves. The relationship we have with our own parts is reflected in how we interact in the world. And so it's like, okay, how can I connect to and use this to better understand myself in um making the conflict a little bit easier to navigate. I say easier because it's not
Mm.
easy, So it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
how can we make it as smooth as possible,
Yeah.
knowing that
Yeah.
it's still going to be like treacherous, you know?
I honestly am like, I just a new insight hit me just seeing my own marriage of just being like, my wife is a human being. Like, this person's a human, and like, I give myself, and this is maybe what avoidant partners do, is I give myself so much grace for failure. I give myself so much grace for
Mm.
imperfection, because if you knew and understand me, then you would like,
Yeah, yeah,
that's where
yeah,
I
yeah,
go.
yeah,
But, like, my wife is that person, and I think I didn't even, notice how easy it is for me to idealize or, fantasize about having someone who needs to be a certain way because they need to come save you. They need to come get you. But
for
that's
sure.
not them. They are a human too that has their wound set, that, wants to scroll on their phone, and I'm not describing my wife. I'm just saying, like, for all of us, like like, we have partners who want to eat fast food. They want to do this, and, like, that is who they are, and can we want a different version of them? Sure. And that's okay to want something different.
Yeah,
But at the same time, giving them grace that like they're figuring this thing out, and like we get to be their collaborator of the ideal version of themselves. And how do we actually like partner with them to both become the version that would excite each other and ourselves individually.
yeah, yeah. There's that. Um, I mean, the podcast is named Resiliently Rising because of that nervous system polyvagal ladder. But I'm
Yeah.
like, let's talk about in the relationship, like the partnership that you are resiliently rising into your
Mm,
greatest potential,
mm,
individually and as a partnership. Um, but yeah, I think of that. Uh, my husband said something the other day about his therapist mentioned that we expect each other to be robots, like to respond the way that we want them to respond or how we think they should respond, but to give grace. It's all like a lot of his work relationships, but the giving grace for humanness, just
Yeah.
like we're human beings and we don't always show up the way, don't almost, we rarely show up the way that other people want us to, and
Yeah.
it's like, hey, I like to eat my hamburger with my hands and somebody else likes to eat it with a fork and knife, but we're both eating the hamburger. Does it really matter which method we're using? You know? And it's
Yeah.
like, no, you have to eat it this way. But we tend to do that in our partnerships where it's like, you should be handling this conflict the same way I'm handling this conflict versus
Yeah.
like, hey, let's come together in this teamwork of how do we want to handle this conflict? And my methods and your methods that share why we have those methods and what experiences we've had that have taught us that those methods are the best, and let's kind of weed through, well, what's going to work for us?
Yeah.
How do we want to navigate this conflict or parenting, which is full of a lot of conflicts. You're not going to see eye to eye on that. Um, but yeah, like we expect the other person to show up how we show up, and just how boring that would be, right? It's like, let's come together and our bodies like there to be conflict. I know that sounds awful, but I tell people if we're like good all the time, we're dead because we flatlined. Like
Yeah.
you're at a hospital, the flat line, the person
Yeah.
died. Our body likes variety. It needs variety. It needs to be challenged. Like that's how we continue to grow. Our body looks for that, wants that. And so lean into that conflict as a team versus as they're avoidant and they're anxious and they just need to do this and they just need to do that. But really
Yeah.
the we versus the I.
I love what you just said because I think what this illuminated something else where I think it feels real. It feels really real. Like, and again, if I'm thinking about the couple that they're 10, 20, 30 years married,
Mm.
listening to this, and they're like ships in the night, and they have this classic anxious avoidant thing. Maybe there's betrayal here too. Like, yeah, I noticed it for myself, like having some core principles to rely on, like when there's nothing else in the
Mhm.
way of like, who should do what and what's right, wrong, fair, unfair. Like when all that's like stripped away, all we're left with is how we feel. And like we have to like allow ourselves to have permission to have that anger because that feels relatable. That feels actually
Yeah.
relatable to the partner who's experiencing the dynamic with us in real time. And something that I've actually coached so many people, like clients through, is specifically, and this is usually more of a fearful avoidant thing, the disorganized, but it's usually that there's some avoidant partners who get so frustrated with the anxious partner because they just sense that they want reality. They almost want their partner to be more angry. They want their
Oh, yeah.
partner to
Yes.
lock in and be like, no, I feel like you're putting on a mask. And that anxious person's like, no, it's not. All I've ever wanted to do is love you. All I've ever been doing is serving you. I don't have these evil thoughts and feelings. And to me, that like I like see that and I go like, no, they actually want you to speak out your truth. They're inviting that, and that is their protest. They're feeling disconnected because it makes more sense to them. If you do have a problem with them, they're over
Yes.
there saying, "There's no way that I am not impacting you." I know, like
Yes.
that was actually something I say to my wife. I'm like, I know I'm impacting you. I know it. There's no way that you don't have a horrible view of me, and I feel like I'm playing detective to try to find it.
Yeah.
And I think there's something that's just like so relieving about authenticity and something even as a breakthrough in my marriage and it's just like when you can own your position, own exactly how you feel and think about something and let it create rupture is something
Yes.
I'm learning in my anxious traits. Letting rupture happen. It's like I'm gonna own this because I don't want bitterness and resentment. I don't want to have to keep performing for the rest of my life, right? And I think for that avoidant, they have that same challenge. You have to rupture things by being vulnerable. You have to let your voice of what your needs, desires, and likely incorrect narration of who your partner is. You have to let that come out and affect them for a few days. And then like you have to choose to have conflict over the course of a couple days. That is a normal experience. And we're in a world where it's like, how do we avoid that? And we spend more dollars trying to avoid multiple days of conflict instead of just like accepting that there's going to be an expectation that we're going to have conflict.
Yeah.
And I'm going to purposely put it here because it's better for us. And it makes sense. And it's more real than all the avoiding and tiptoeing we're doing.
100%. Like, we could just say, okay, great for listening. Thanks, bye. Because that was,
yeah, thanks, guys.
that was like it. Nailed it. A lot of people after betrayal, it's all about the trust. And how do I build trust and build trust and build trust? And I'm like, okay, you're not going to want to hear this. But to build trust, you got to give trust.
Oof.
Yeah.
Oh, ooh, tell me about that. I need to understand what you mean when you say that. Oh.
Okay, so it's like you titrated. Okay, if you want to know, I'm gonna put in the parenting realm, so that way it doesn't trigger as many people. I'm gonna use this example. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I mentioned I have teenagers, and as they're branching out into being able to do more, it's like, all right, I'm going to trust that you can come home on time by not texting you to say that reminding you, be home, be home. So I'm going to put the trust in you by allowing you the opportunity to potentially break it. But it's starting out in small doses. So it's not like this overarching trust is not an all or nothing. Okay, first name that. You can trust in degrees, you can trust in some areas, not in others. And so there's baby stepping your way into the bigger trust with the smaller trust. I'm going to allow the opportunity. I'm going to extend vulnerability to see how you do. I'm going to share my feelings with something, and that's how I'm going to know whether or not I can trust you with my feelings. It's going to be on like a small scale versus a big kahuna. A small scale to see, can I trust you with my feeling on this? You showed up? Great. A little bit trust built. Now I'm going to try to trust you with this, but you didn't? Okay, then I got to step back. The only way to really be able to see how you do in conflict is by having conflict. The only way to know if you can trust somebody is by allowing them opportunities to potentially break it. It's kind of like after betrayal, there's a lot of monitoring and micromanaging out of course, like safety seeking. You're desperately not wanting it to happen again, so you're tracking everything. But at the same time, if you are controlling the situation, there's no trust being built. You have no idea because no opportunity to show trustworthiness is happening. So you have to give trust. Titrated is a big word, like all caps, under, bold, italicize, all of it. You titrate the process. I give trust to know if I can give trust.
Wow.
And that's the same with the conflict. We avoid conflict because we're afraid we can't trust that we can get through it. And it feels like life or death for both partners. But the only way to know, can we get through this, is by doing it. Is to see how, we're going to have this conflict to see how can we trust that we can get through this conflict, that you're going to show up for me. And when both people have these insecurities of abandonment, I mean, my own insecurities show up in my husband, as I'm like, I don't really want to, I don't want to bring this up because I'm scared. And then he shows up. It's like, oh my gosh, okay. Yes, I can trust you're going to show up. Or as you're naming the keeping it all in, I'm like, my husband, just tell me what the hell you're feeling. You're mad. I know you're mad, And then it's by him expressing it and me being able to show up safely, it reaffirms to the system a new experience. Our nervous system needs new experiences. It says, oh, I don't have to be afraid of sharing my feelings anymore because it was safely received. That conflict that I feared went okay.
Yeah.
That's the only way to navigate the trust building, is to give it.
Wow. Yeah. The vulnerability of putting yourself out there again. And
yeah.
I'm curious to hear from you. Like, what are some of those mindsets, because here's how I'm thinking about it. Some of the mindsets, because like it's vulnerable to like put yourself out there. Something that like, maybe this is just me, and I'll speak for Drew. Like, I feel like for me, because I spent so much time being either extremely avoidant or overly anxious, I feel like you tell these yourself like fairy tale stories that you want to be true, or you're fighting for the ideal thing so bad that you overlook kind of reality at what it really is. And
Hmm.
it's protecting you from like a bunch of regret or disappointment or whatever it is we're protecting, right? And what's like that mindset? Because for me, like, for example, even, recently I've had, clients where it's just like, I look at them and I'm just like, look, I would expect worse. I almost want you to remove any type of rose-colored glasses you have on a situation because like this is not what you want it to be at all. It's actually like, and so like as you're extending trust, like here's what I would tell you, like I expect the worst. You know, I'm okay being so wrong with that. Like truly, I truly am just like leading from my heart on that. I'm curious to know what your kind of mindsets and perspectives might be around something like that. What's been helpful?
Well, first and foremost, this is my mantra. People listening here all the time. Trust grows where safety lives. And so first and foremost, it all comes back to your nervous system. The lens
Mm,
that we have everything, that mindset is a nervous system state. Like when we look at a thought pattern that somebody has, their mindset that they have, that tells us where their nervous system is. And to
ooh.
be able to look at that and say, oh, okay, well, then this is what we tend to. This is what we're needing. The body still doesn't feel safe here. And so as we create that safety, then I call it an expansion. Then now the rose-colored glasses, it's not I see only this, it's now I can take it all in because I have the capacity to take it all in.
Mm,
My protective parts that have been shielding me no longer need to, because there's the trust in self first and foremost, that there's the safety and the capacity to acknowledge and then take action, whatever action that may be. So trust grows where safety lives. I hope that goes on my tombstone. It's a quote that I am most proud of coming up with.
it was good. I like double taked it. I don't know if people watch, but it's like I double take. So like using what you just said, how I would reinterpret what I said, where, when I'm encouraging someone to be like, yeah, just like don't expect the worst. We're hearing Drew's nervous system basically reflect like, brace for danger. Like I'm forecasting,
Mm,
maybe that could be unfair, but to be honest, and maybe this is how maybe you or your listeners feel. Yeah, I by and large come into all my sessions not trusting the avoidant. Like I don't, and I
mm.
love them enough to tell them that to their face, and I would own that and just stand on that position. Like I don't, and it's not because I don't love you and care about you. It's the opposite. I'm your biggest advocate,
Well,
but
I
because I'm
think
your
they
biggest
probably don't
advocate,
trust themselves, like they're not trusting themselves either, right? So, yeah.
yeah, and so I'm like, maybe that's where it's coming from, where I'm like, I yeah, I love, as someone who, yeah, per my point, what I mentioned earlier, where it's like it was very traumatizing to take off the mask and see
Hmm.
who was in the mirror underneath all of that, and the true impact I had for years and years and years, and the ways that affected my wife, and then my kids too as they were born. For me, that I just feel like this duty a little bit where, um, I don't know, like I'm almost trying to earn a little bit of like trust back and just
Hmm.
advocate for something different and new, like understanding that avoidant partner, but also like speaking pretty real. Cause I'm like, I don't think a lot of women or anxious partners are far off from
Right.
their fears of their avoidant partner. And I don't want to trigger that or like have that, create the ball rolling in someone's mind of like, if they have like a paranoia. I'm not trying to get after that. What I am saying though is, to your own point, like our nervous system is so wisdom wise and filled with scanning, technology
Yes.
for that I can confidently say that, to your point, if you have a question that's torturing you, your nervous system is speaking up for, ooh, I'm having some like I'm clocking and noticing
Yes.
a lot of suspicion, and I'm noticing a lot of disconnection and space and weirdness that doesn't have a coherent explanation.
Mm.
And I just like, I don't know, like maybe you can fill in the blanks for me because I feel like you have a lot of wisdom here. But like like especially in couple sessions, you just know when you hear and feel a coherent explanation. It's just there. You see it in body language, tone. It's just so,
Yeah.
present. And as someone who's been avoidant, I know what it sounds like when you're covering, when you are in denial in the moment, you're speaking out of denial. You're speaking
Yeah.
completely out of self-protection. And you are, as someone who's done this, you're believing it as you're saying it. You are believing your own denial. You must is the feeling. And so yeah, I'm curious to, it just comes back to the body, I suppose,
Yeah.
like,
Well, everything comes back to the body, I would say.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The well, I think of, it's like um the inside outside between.
Oh,
Body the safety threat detection system is pulling information internally, it's pulling information in your environment and pulling information from between us. And to get a sense of, well, what's real, what's right, what's safe, what's dangerous, all of that. And this is where our nervous system, there's an energy to it, the state that we're in. If we're lying and we're deceptive and we're contorting, manipulating, whatever it may be, our nervous system is going to reflect that. And
yeah,
so your words can say whatever they want to say, but the energy that you're exuding, whether you're in your authenticity or you're in your protective part, that is going to be there. And this is where I want to speak to for those that are like, wait a minute, I have no evidence. Like I have no evidence to prove it. Where does some of the information come from? Inside of your own body. That is evidence. Something feels off. I just know it. That your gut instinct is evidence because your body
yeah,
is pulling information internally to get a sense of evidence. And
yeah.
so that's where there's the importance of being able to distinguish. This is why the relationship with your body matters so much and how your nervous system speaks to you. Is this my intuition or is this my trauma response? Being able to sift that out, which is a lot of internal work and knowing, is this a trigger point from a past experience or is this a current threat?
Yeah.
But yeah, very much so. There, you cannot, that's why I tell my kids, don't bother lying to me. I am a human lie detector. I have perfected the art. So don't bother. And I know when my husband says everything's fine, I'm like, I know something's not fine. Like, don't even pull that one on me. You're
Just
upset about something. What happened at work? You're tired. What's going on? I know it. Um, and that's where that relationship with yourself matters so much and saying, no, 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 I, I know this. And you don't question you of like, oh, well, they said nothing. That incongruence is exhausting and terrifying
it,
to say what I'm feeling. And yeah.
I'm curious. I not to interview the podcast host here, but I like to this point feel like one of the scariest things to do any relationship is to admit some really ugly truths. And when we say truths, just to be clear, like it's just emotional realities, right? Internal
Hmm.
states that are like in your body that like you've assigned meaning to, and you've lived in that meaning and
Right.
that state in your body, and they've paired, they've associated, and so some of that is true and real, and some of it could be, to your point, just exacerbating some potential wounds. Um, and I love how you said it takes time to sort the difference. And I'm curious what your feeling is here. That like, do you feel like it's helpful or productive to almost assume some of the worst of your own worst fears, even if they're not true, only because it could be such a wound? Um, eh, I here's why I asked that. I think for me, something that I've at least maybe in my own avoidance, like as someone who really who avoided their feelings for a long time, like I was a professional intellectualizer,
Oh,
professional.
um, avoidance is intellectualizing
Oh,
is a superpower for for those avoidant. Stay out of those feelings, right?
oh, I just was so good at it, and I just would like to the point where I knew all the psych. I knew all
Mm,
the psych, and
hmm.
still wasn't feeling feelings. I still wasn't in my body, and still all those things.
Yes.
And I think what got me to that point though was like my body was storing those worst fears, and just acknowledging them in that form. And maybe what we're really saying is like yeah, just being present with the big feeling of a worse fear is maybe just what's really productive down there. But for a long time, I didn't have that lens of the body to like actually
Hmm.
know that that's what was going on. It was just like I had to like think about it intellectually. And it was just like,
Yeah.
just acknowledge the worst case scenario and feel it, and then you'll be free. You know, it was like the way it made sense to me.
Yeah.
And maybe almost how I even kind of do some of my own, like, social media is even just like so many. It took me like, I sat around, I literally did this for 6 months, tried to understand what people even meant when they said, get into your body. Like, I didn't
Mm.
understand it. I researched, I looked it up, I like wrote it out because like I do this work and it was super important to me, and I just didn't get it. I couldn't grasp it. And, finally had the breakthrough because, you have enough trauma and then it's the only thing left. And so you start doing breathing and you start going, oh, like, wow. Oh, it's like all this
There's
feeling
something
down
there.
here.
What?
Yeah. What
Yeah.
is going on down here? Yeah. So I don't know. I just riffed other than to say, like, I think, maybe I'm just describing the intellectualizer's kind of like, block, maybe.
Oh, 100%. And I think there's even being mindful of the ability to intellectualize emotion. That
Yeah.
there's,
Oh,
which is why we get so caught up in talking about feelings versus, and it's something um, it comes up often to slow down and invite clients to, oh, that's awesome to name that emotion. Let's go a little bit deeper of where do you notice that in the body, or what is that like? Even describe that emotion to me. What's that like? Because I think as a whole, we've gotten a lot better at naming emotions, and to some degree, and maybe to a detriment, when we then use that language to intellectualize being in the body versus actually being in the body. So
yeah.
there is a lot of like, I'm naming my emotions. Clearly, I'm not avoiding, but often we're naming the emotions to avoid being in the emotions, and there's a distinction there.
That's so wonderfully said. That's exactly what I did for years. I did talk therapy for 5 years, and I couldn't have even caught that. I did have, moments where I could break through and get into my heart. But yeah, the intellectualization and I noticed, what I noticed specifically, in my kind of work, I don't, I also noticed this with, I think the site, like psychology and like, having a lot of awareness of, these labels and stuff yeah, to your point, can feel like we're actually avoiding like really being present with them. And I think that's what happened to me too, is like, even in the midst of my greatest traumas, like I felt I was in anxious mode,
Hmm.
trauma, rehashing, rethinking about it, literally knowing the information logically that it's in the body, but still not being brave enough to sit and hold that space and actually depend on it to do the job that it needs to do. And I'm just like thinking that some other external thing or insight or awareness or, thinking through it would somehow do it. And it just
Yeah.
never happened. It would never happen as long as I tried.
Yeah.
And, so I love your insight on that.
That's probably a pretty big blind spot, I would say, because it seems like we're being in the body, being able to name an
Oh,
emotion, when it's
yeah.
like, oh, but are you actually, like, really, what is
Yeah.
that like to then touch into that? But again, that compassion for, wow, your body used a really powerful tool in that moment to get through not having to feel that. Wow, what was that like? How did that work? How did that help you at the time, and how has that helped you? Because
Yeah.
at the core, whether it's anxious or avoidant, at the core, they're serving a damn good purpose.
Yeah.
And so if we can, no matter what strategy we use, look at it with that compassionate, non-judgmental, curious lens, our own strategies and our partner's strategy. What's at the root of it? Because it stemmed from an insecurity. It stemmed from a need for survival. And really, I think that opens the door to a lot of disarmoring.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
the awareness of like knowing that every part of me, and I think this is true for avoidant partners, is like and this is helpful for listeners. The number one way that I actually do my work with avoidance in couples is I just start with the hurt of the avoidant partner. Um,
Mm.
usually that anxious partner has been in therapy a few times. They've been listening to the podcast and the information, and usually we're going to come in and we're going to hear their story and we're going to like empathize, and that's just going to happen. But what I don't know can happen for that avoidant person is to have someone look at them and go, okay, like, tell me your point of view. And usually it's some sort of story that they don't feel seen, they don't feel understood, they don't feel believed. And it's because they're expressing this like real painful narrative that they've created and needed to believe to stay safe. And when I just simply validate that that's okay and that's what you're feeling and how you're narrating things to stay safe and to like, because you want someone to emotionally connect with the feeling that you feel hurt, whether that's fair or valid or whatever is a whole different discussion. But what we can say is that you desire someone to emotionally care about that experience for you. And right there when they're like, yes, you see me, dude. Yeah, absolutely. And I go, oh, is it possible that maybe your partner maybe wants the same experience? And they're like, yeah, when you say it like that, if they would have just said it like that, I'm like, trust me, they have, right? But like, it's like you're just showing them what it feels like to like not have to deny how they feel, to deny their story, but to have to be fully welcomed, even if it's completely incorrect. And I always brace that anxious partner, that secure partner, to be like, hey, this is going to be really painful and you're going to hear some incorrect things. And we're not here to get that right. What we are here is have them know how they feel about the story they've created, so that they feel seen and know what that experience is like. If they don't know what the experience is like, they'll never know how to step outside of themselves and even know that you have an experience like that without having one themselves. Because right now, all they know, I feel like a victim, they feel like the victim. And we want to get them out of that victim triangle just to like acknowledge that protective part of self, that firefighter, manager, whoever's standing in the way, to be like, hey, we see your job and like we validate that like you're holding this burden for this person. And like, what if you didn't have to? Like, what if we could actually just like nurture and soothe your role in doing this? So that's what I do. And then usually from them, we can kind of get them to do some vulnerability, which is going to feel like marbles and pebbles to their partner. They're going to just simply say something like, yeah, it makes me sad to, hear that this is your experiences. To that guy, it's like a boulder. Like that man has probably never done that, in years. No dude is ever sitting around doing that. Right.
Yeah.
But and sometimes that other partner can be so done. They're like, yeah, but this isn't fast enough. And I'm like, I hear you. I'm sure that is true. I'm sure if I had a camera in your house and I just watched tape, if I was in your house, I'm sure that's true. And it's a boulder for him and a pebble for you. And over time, what's going to happen is if he keeps doing it, that boulder will become lighter and lighter to the point where it becomes a marble and a pebble, and it will feel like you're collecting a boulder of connection and love. So hang in there and just meet in your middle. I know there's an idealized middle that we want to, the internet has for us, but like that man is a real man and he is where he is. And, if he can take his step, if he can keep taking his step, and grow 1% every day, or that avoidant partner, not to be gender specific, but, right. So all of it to say that's kind of like a philosophy that I run with. And I do see it, you can feel the authenticity come back to the couple because there's realness happening. And they're like, oh, this didn't seem like what I thought it was. I thought it would be a magical moment. He'd break down in tears, he'd push through, he'd radically change. He'd see the error of his ways. No, that's never how I've seen it work. It only works when they slowly just drip into their vulnerability. And there's a weird moment where it's like, wow, this feels really real between us and we don't know what to do with this. It's like we're seeing each other all over again. Yeah. So,
I think as much as we want things to go fast, fast isn't real. I mean, it's not even just that it's not real, but it's kind of like, oh, let's do, this weekend retreat. That weekend retreat is not going to change the dynamic. That's not going to be the transformation, but that's the hope is, I want it to be fast, but the nervous system, like slow, gentle, titrated. That's why I often tell people when they come and say, how long is this going to take? And I'm like, guess what? The slower we go at this, the faster it's going to go. But if we try to rush this, it's going to go a whole heck of a lot slower. We have to just gently go into this because people can 100% change. That's always the question. People can't change. Absolutely, they can. And there's enough research and science to confirm that people can change. It's
Totally
not
agree.
quick. If you think it's going to be quick, you're going to be sorely disappointed. But people change every day. You go to college, you're changing. You have a baby, you're changing. Puberty is change. Growing old, we're aging. Our
Yeah.
bodies and brains are literally every single day changing. There is no like,
There's no stagnant. Yeah.
guys, yeah, like we are designed to birth to death is a change the whole way through. We're
Yeah.
designed to change. We do. But birth to death is not quick. It's a slow process.
Yeah.
Just like healing is not quick. So if there's a gimmick for heal in 6 months, I be leery, because
Yeah.
it's a slow and gentle process to really make that transformation.
It is.
So, Drew, I have loved every bit of this conversation. If
So
there,
good. This is so good.
I know you're like, I'm like, man, can we just keep going? This is awesome.
It is.
But if there were like a key takeaway from all of this, you're wanting to leave it, just a final thought, final message to those that maybe they are the one that's avoidant or they're navigating a relationship with somebody that's avoidant. What's kind of the message you want to leave with them?
Oh man, my big message for the person who's with the avoidant, like anxious partner, secure partner, fearful avoidant, whoever it is, just believe in your voice, believe in your wisdom, believe in your body. Like, you know, the hardest challenge is truly to own your position, cause rupture. That would be like the one takeaway. It's like, um, you how you feel with all your flaws is enough. I know that
Mhm.
that could feel like something that's put on a candle or a inscription somewhere, but like the enoughness idea, I actually like caught myself really feeling pretty emotional. Having to kind of really like say that over myself that I'm good and I'm enough. Because I think the avoidant fear is like I'm bad. I'm like this evil person. Like, and I have defect in my DNA, and there's no one is going to say anything otherwise. But the enough piece is that like in my flaws, I as a human come prepackaged with failure flaws forever and imperfections that will cause unwanted stress and shame, and that will exist. And my goal is never to like be 100% rid of it. It's just forming a beautiful relationship with it where I can hold space for it and discharge as much as I can. But in all of that, that by itself makes me enough that I am a person and like everybody else. Like that's the deal we get when we're born. And so that just means but inherently that somehow we are enough. That's very like ethereal, but maybe it meets somebody. And then for that avoidant partner, I would say the one big thing is you're not evil. You are not evil. Like I know everybody wants to convince you that you're evil and that you're horrible. Yes, you may have some impact, and that is true. And I think honestly, this is something I would just say to the avoidant person is like, yes, you do just need to say sorry. You do just need to say you're wrong. You do just need to admit your impact. Like there is no way around it. You will never convince your partner that they can't talk about their feelings. And there's just some of these realities I just want to say from the rooftop. Like you are running and running and running, but really like I just care about like you, dear listener, who is avoidant and feeling like if I share who I am, they will hate me. They will like, they'll never love me again. They will reject me. They will abandon me. And I can't say if that's true or not, but clearly you feel that way. You feel that way about yourself. And oh my gosh, who, who, what could someone say that would actually like really soothe you in that, avoidant partner? Like I'm bad, I'm no good, I'm a piece of, whatever, you know. But if you had a grown up that was older and wiser, or if you had a perfect partner, um, that could speak to you and actually tell you exactly what you wanted to hear, and it met you perfectly, what would it be? What would that thing have been? And that's what I'd encourage you to like wake up and think about every day, avoidant partner.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. How can people
Yeah.
find you? You have so much to give. Where could they find you?
Right now, it's on the socials. So at Drew Daniels, two W's, not because my middle initial, but because real estate on the Instagram handles is running out. So I had to add the extra W. So Drew Daniels, two W's, and you can hear my voice a lot more, and we can hang out in the comment section and stuff. So
Awesome. Well, I would highly, highly recommend those listening to go follow because there is so much more goodness that he offers there. And until next time, take a deep breath, be gentle with yourself, and keep rising.